Hello people, how y'all doing? I've been in the shape of the earth presentation of proofs and whatnot for well over 6 years now. And in that time, I have never once, I don't know why, ever heard anybody present the physical fallacy of all of the weight being in the Northern Hemisphere and why it's up there instead of all the weight in the Southern Hemisphere. Let me just briefly give you a rundown on what I'm talking about. See, I was doing the video on this one-man clown show here, Wolfpack's Mission Control. The only one of them who has the ball enough to show his face, pun intended on the ball. Anyway, it's going back and forth. He's using the metric system, and I'm using the American Standard System. And first of all, I build this chart here using just the American Standard System over here of miles, feet, and inches per radius of the Earth. And then I decide I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the metric system to deal with his numbers too. And so I write the metric numbers over here. And then as I'm looking at these numbers here, I realize that these could almost represent the millions and millions of tons of Earth on the Western Hemisphere here and the Eastern Hemisphere here if you replace the distance with tonnage. You got 3963 million and millions of tons over here and 6377 millions and millions of tons over here in the Eastern Hemisphere. If you were to just spin it around and have it work wise, as the Earth is supposed to spin anyway. And then I got to thinking, I'm thinking to myself, well, what's the weight distribution to the Southern Hemisphere? And so I come here and I see that the distribution of land has changed, yada yada, that's your opinion. And the northern half of Earth includes islands. It is estimated 68% of Earth's land exists in the northern hemisphere, while 32% is located in the southern hemisphere. So, with that, they're using their logic right there. That would mean that 68% of the ocean is in the southern hemisphere, while 32% of the ocean is in the northern hemisphere. So then I decided I was going to take this one step further and see where the population goes. And so I came here to geosumnus.com. Humanity in your hemisphere, the northern hemisphere, is home to 90% of Earth's total population. And so I went here and I went ahead and grabbed all of the different land masses by cubic foot pertaining to sand, gravel, clay, and soil, both wet and dry, and averaged the pounds of 87.5 pounds per unit of land. And I did the same thing, 1 cubic foot of salt water, since 99% of the water on Earth is ocean water and salted, so I didn't even bother using the fresh water. And it is 62.5 pounds per cubic foot. Did I say square there? I meant cubic if I did, sorry. And then I went so far as to look at the body mass per cubic foot is 63.1 pounds. So you take these are just 1 unit, mind you, 1 unit of measurement per weight. And so you take your 68% of the land in the Northern Hemisphere and 32% of the land in the Southern Hemisphere is 100% of the land. You take your 68% of the water in the Southern Hemisphere and your 32% of the water in the Northern Hemisphere, and that's 100%. You take your 90% of the population in the Northern Hemisphere, you take your 10% of the population in the Southern Hemisphere, that's 100%. So in the Northern Hemisphere, you take this is 1 unit of measurement, mind you. You take your 68 and you multiply that by 87.5, the average of the land per unit, 1 cubic foot, and you end up with 37,573.5 units of measurement. You do the same in the Southern Hemisphere with 32% of the land times 87.5, and you equal out to have 2,800 units of measurement. So you take your water, your saltwater oceans, and at 68% in the Southern Hemisphere times the weight of salt water per cubic foot of 62.5, and that's 4,250 pounds per unit of measurement. You do the same with the water in the Northern Hemisphere, 32% of the water times 62.5 pounds per unit of measurement, and you end up with 2,000 pounds per unit of measurement in the Northern Hemisphere. And you take your population of 90% and multiply that by the body mass per cubic foot of 63.1 pounds, and you end up with 5,679 pounds of body mass per unit of weight. And you do the 10% in the Southern Hemisphere with the cubic weight of body mass of 63.1, and you end up with 631 cubic feet per weight unit. That's only 1 unit per hemisphere now, folks. And when you add these three here of the weight combined to the Northern Hemisphere, you end up with 45,216.5 units of weight in the Northern Hemisphere. And when you add these together in the Southern Hemisphere, you end up with 7,681 units of weight in the Southern Hemisphere. So the Northern Hemisphere has over 6 times the unit weight as the Southern Hemisphere. So I ask you, everyone, why is not Australia in the Northern Hemisphere by logical reason and observable fact on weight settles to the lower of a ball no matter what? If you take a basketball and you put 1 ounce of weight on the bottom of that basketball and you put 6 ounces of weight on the top of that basketball, you can do all you want to do to attempt to get that top of that basketball with the 6 ounces more weight to stay on top. You can even rotate it 15 degrees per hour, and I guarantee you that mass weight 6 times as much as the Southern Hemisphere, that Northern Hemisphere of that basketball is going to turn up, and you're going to have the lesser weight on top. I challenge any one of you sphere idiots to go ahead and prove me wrong. Like I said, I haven't heard anybody address this in the over 6 years I've been involved with this, and I've just it came to me while I was dealing with this other sphere idiot who won't leave me alone, and I'm going to have to continue to deal with him now too, and I don't even want to. I don't like dealing with him. But anyway, I regress. You guys all have a good day, and let me know what you think, and be well.